Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Evolvepreneur Secret Show for entrepreneurs, and I'm your host, Brian Silverthorne. And it's my mission to help entrepreneurs make a difference and to navigate the often challenging worlds of startup and growth or relaunch. And today we're going to dig deep with our guests to get you some great concepts and strategies to fast track your business. And our special guest today is Tony Martignetti. And Tony is a trusted advisor, a coach, an experienced creator, an author, a podcast host, and a speaker. So, welcome to the show, Tony. You got a, quite a chunk of experience and areas of interest there.
Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate coming on the show, and yeah, it's been an interesting journey for me. So that just touches the surface around what really got me into the work I'm doing.
Okay, well let's start off with that by asking you what inspired you to get into the work you're doing.
Yeah, it's a great question. The journey for me was I spent most of my life working in biotech, life sciences in general, in the finance and strategy world, which is interesting because you think, well, how does that translate into becoming a coach and someone who does writes books and what have you. And the reality is that I found myself not really connected with who I really wanted to be, and people noticed it before I did. They were noticing that there was something different about how I was showing up, that there was more to me than I was actually putting out. And I started to listen and said, well, why do people find that there's more to me than I was really, showing? And when I started listening to that and maybe asking myself more of those difficult questions people don't often ask themselves, I started to realize that I needed to explore that further. I needed to, do some experiments, if you will, and find out what else is possible. And although I had that inclination and that thought, I still didn't necessarily take the leap until I had a moment where I was sitting in a boardroom and I realized that the calling was coming to me in the shape of just seeing the leaders and how they were showing up to me. I realized I needed to change the way leaders were showing up, and not have that toxicity that I was seeing. I needed to leave the room to change the room. And that's what really got me into the work I'm doing. It's quite a journey.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's interesting when we have those little, the universe kind of gives us a nudge. Some of it slaps us upside the head, to get going
Totally.
in the right direction. Yeah. So what was your biggest challenge when you got made the transition and got started?
Yeah, I mean, the one of the classic situations you run into is, what am I doing? Who am I to be doing this? This change, and imposter syndrome was the word that came to mind for me. And what exactly was it going to create? So the first thought was that I was going to be a coach, but like, who is going to want me as their coach, and how would I create that path? So the first journey is to really get myself super uncomfortable and ensure that I was understanding, who I was, what did I really have under the tank. So I had to really explore deeper into who I was before I could explore other people in a deeper way. There's a quote that comes to mind around this period in time when I first started my journey, which was, if you're willing to feel everything, you can have anything. And I love that quote because it's about really exploring the depths of your range and allowing that to really see the possibilities of what's available to you. And then once you see that, then you can start to rebuild from there. And that's exactly what I did. I started to get certifications. I started to understand what is it that makes people want to change or to see things differently. And then slowly but surely started to build my business from that place of really vulnerable uncomfortableness.
Yeah, I have not heard that quote before, and I like that one. So I guess you kind of got to look inward and be honest with yourself before you can move outward. So
Yeah.
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 So now that you've been doing this for a little bit, what's your current focus, and what do you say? Where would you like to be, say, 3 years from now?
Yeah, I love your question. There's been an interesting roller coaster I've been on, and a lot of different things that have lit me up. And I think when we talk about inspiration, because that's the name of my company, Inspired Purpose Coaching, I'm constantly thinking as I go through my journey about, okay, what's sparking me up now? What is real for me now? I don't want to necessarily follow the herd and do exactly what everyone else is doing, because eventually that becomes not really me. And so I have to sometimes step back from the work and say, where am I going to next? And does it inspire me? Does it spark me up, get me excited? And that might mean a slight pivot from where I am right now, and that's okay. And so, just to give you a sense as to what that means for me going forward, I'm leaning more into doing facilitations, taking groups together and getting them to move together into new ways of seeing things, navigating change together. And that has been powerful for me. I talk about being an experience creator, and that for me is about really getting people in a room and getting them to experience things in a different way, using things like art as a way to see things through a different lens, or doing things like creating a new way of looking at their business, or just a new way of looking at their lives. So that might also involve getting out in nature, which I'm really excited about next year, getting people out more often into nature and experiencing the world outside.
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of the outdoors anyway. So
Yeah.
you get the I guess you have an opportunity to make a stronger connection out there in more ways than one.
Yeah.
So, do you see any major roadblocks that may be preventing you from achieving your vision, and do you have a plan to knock those down or run around them?
Roadblocks. I think the only roadblock is always is your own limitations. It's you. So when I look in the mirror, I got to make sure that I don't hold myself back from what's possible. And I think about the things that often for me is I have to like state it and just say, here's my intention. I'm going to make this happen. And I'm going to give you an example. So last year, I wrote a book called Climbing the Right Mountain, which is about how you navigate your career and your life, and making sure that you are thinking about you're on the right path. And when I wrote the book, someone asked me, "Hey, what's the next mountain for you?" And the first words out of my mouth was, "Well, I guess I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro," because that was something on my bucket list of sorts. And so I made the claim. I said, I'm going to climb, and I don't go back on my word. I decided that I would climb. So I did this August. I climbed Kilimanjaro, and that was completed. And so when I make a commitment to myself, I have to make sure I follow through and see it through to the end. And that might mean that it's not 100% perfect, but at least it's aligned with that vision that I've created. The only thing that will get in the way of me making that happen is some force of nature or myself.
Yeah,
So,
that's an interesting piece of advice, because or an interesting thought. The one way people are evaluated in the business world and in life is if they keep their commitments.
yeah,
So if you keep a commitment to yourself, you're also building that self-confidence, I would guess, to move forward. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah. And I think there's a sense of like when you do something like that, it's showing other people that if you believe that you can and you continue to make steps to make it possible, anything is possible. That if I were to say to you right now, okay, you want to make a change in your career or you want to build a new business tomorrow, a lot of people would say, oh, okay, well, depends on what it is. There's a lot of, you can't necessarily build $1 billion business in overnight. Sure. But you can take steps towards that. And it's definitely not impossible. It's just a simple step of laying the groundwork once you get that vision and having the commitment to do those steps. And as I said earlier, being willing to feel all the things that go along with that, the things that will be challenging, there'll be moments that will really, be hard for you to handle. The climb up the mountain is not an easy ascent, but it's worthwhile if you're willing to take the journey. The key challenge when you know you're on the wrong mountain is that you just don't like the path. You don't enjoy the view along the way. If you're waiting till you get to the end and that's all you care about, you may be on the wrong mountain.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Well, we're getting toward the end here. You have any final thoughts to help out our listeners?
Yeah. One of the things I love sharing with people is if you're feeling like you're stuck or you feel like there's something that you need to do differently, I like telling people to expand your vision and narrow your focus. What I mean by that is sometimes you're just going to step away and look at things from a different perspective. What else is possible for you? When you see a new possibility, connect to it and then use that as your new focus. Narrow in and take the steps to make that possible. You'll be thankful that you did.
Well, that's great advice. I like the I don't know if it's an analogy or a metaphor. I'm not good at that stuff, but expand your vision and narrow your focus.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use that as a wrap on another great guest episode of the Evolvepreneur Secret Show for entrepreneurs. And if you like it, just before you go, please give us a 5-star review and maybe share it with a few friends. And if you want to make sure you catch up on some past episodes you might have missed and make sure you don't miss any of the ones coming up, go to evolvepreneursecrets.show. And if you're an entrepreneur and you got a great idea rolling around in your head, let's get it out there today. Thanks for listening.